The scream tore through the mountain air, just as Xavier felt the ground beneath his horse rumble like a demon waking from sleep. He wheeled his bay mare around in time to see the entire white face of the peak come sliding down in a thunderous roar, swallowing the narrow trail where he had just seen a lone rider moments before. The woman on the painted horse had been heading east toward the mining camps, her figure small against the vast Sierra Nevada backdrop. And now she was gone, buried somewhere beneath thousands of tons of snow and ice. Nathan did not think. He drove his spurs into his mare's flanks and raced toward the avalanche debris, his heart hammering against his ribs. The December wind of 1876 cut through his wool coat as he dismounted in a spray of powder, his boots sinking deep into the fresh snow. The silence after the avalanche was absolute and terrible, broken only by his own ragged breathing and the settling creak of the snowpack. "Hello," he shouted, his voice swallowed by the vastness. "Can you hear me?" Nothing. Just the whisper of wind through the pines and the distant call of a raven. He had been riding from his ranch outside Truckee, California, heading up to check his trap lines in the high country when he had spotted her. The woman had been bundled in a dark coat, her horse picking its way carefully along the icy trail. Now both were somewhere under the snow, and Nathan knew he had minutes, not hours, before the cold claimed her if the initial impact had not already done so. His hands moved with practiced efficiency, pulling the small folding shovel from his saddlebag. It was meant for digging through snow to find water or clearing campsites, but now it would serve a more desperate purpose. He tried to calculate where she might be, marking in his mind where he had last seen her, accounting for the angle of the slope and the direction of the slide. He started digging. The snow was heavy and wet, each shovelful requiring his full strength. His shoulders burned within minutes, his breath coming in white clouds. He dug methodically, creating a trench, listening for any sound. The sun was already sliding behind the peaks, and he knew darkness would make this impossible. Worse, another storm was rolling in from the west, dark clouds gathering like judgment. "Hold on," he said aloud, speaking to a woman he had never met whose name he did not know. "Just hold on." 15 minutes passed. 30. His muscles screamed and his hands were numb inside his leather gloves. He had moved several cubic yards of snow, creating a crater in the debris field. Doubt crept in, cold as the wind. What if she had been swept further? What if he was digging in entirely the wrong place? What if she was already gone? He thrust the shovel down again, and this time it struck something that was not snow or rock, something that gave slightly under the blade. He dropped to his knees and began tearing at the snow with his bare hands, flinging it aside with desperate speed. Dark fabric appeared, then a flash of brown leather. A saddle. The horse was dead, its neck bent at an unnatural angle, already stiffening in the cold. Nathan's heart sank, but he forced himself to think. If the horse was here, she might be nearby. Riders were often thrown in an avalanche, tumbled separate from their mounts. He expanded his search, circling the dead animal, probing with his shovel, then he heard it. The faintest sound, barely audible over the wind. A moan, weak and muffled, coming from his left. Nathan moved like a man possessed, digging where the sound had come from, calling out, "I am coming. Stay with me." His shovel blade scraped against something, and he forced himself to slow down to be careful. He cleared the snow away with his hands and saw it, a section of dark blue wool, an arm. He dug faster, uncovering a shoulder, a head with hair the color of honey matted with ice and snow. Her face was pale, her lips blue, but her eyes were open, staring up at him with a mixture of terror and relief. "I have you," Nathan said, his voice cracking. "I have you." Her mouth moved, but no sound came out. He could see she was wedged between two boulders that had created a small pocket of air, the only reason she was still breathing. He dug around her carefully, knowing that moving her too quickly could trigger another slide or injure her if something was broken. When he had cleared enough space, he slid his arms under her shoulders and knees and lifted her free. She was shaking violently, her whole body convulsing with cold. Nathan carried her away from the debris field to where his horse waited, laying her gently on a patch of clear ground. He stripped off his heavy coat and wrapped it around her, then pulled a wool blanket from his saddlebag and added that as well. "Can you speak?" he asked, tilting her face toward him. "Are you hurt anywhere? Sea cold," she managed through chattering teeth. "So sea cold. I know, I am going to get you warm. What is your name? Zelda. Zelda Rivers, Nathan Xavier. You are going to be all right, Zelda. I need to get you off this mountain before dark and before that storm hits. Can you ride?" She nodded weakly, though he doubted she truly could. He mounted his mare and then reached down, pulling Zelda up in front of him, settling her sideways across his lap. She was a small woman, slender and fine-boned, and she fit against his chest like she belonged there. He wrapped his arms around her, holding her tight, and turned his horse back down the mountain trail. The ride down was treacherous in the failing light. The trail was narrow and icy, with sheer drops on one side and the unstable slope on the other. Nathan kept the mare at a careful walk, murmuring to her to keep her steady. Zelda drifted in and out of consciousness, her head lolling against his shoulder. He kept talking to her, keeping her awake, knowing that if she fell into deep sleep now she might never wake. "Tell me about yourself," he said. "Where were you going?" "Mining camp," she whispered. "Looking for my brother, Timothy. He went 3 months ago, stopped writing." "What camp?" "Silver Peak, east of here." Nathan knew it. A rough place full of desperate men chasing rumors of ore, not a place for a woman alone. "You came all the way from where?" "Sacramento. Took the train to Truckee, bought the horse yesterday." "That was brave, foolish, but brave." He felt her stiffen slightly in his arms, and even in her weakened state, she found the strength to be indignant. "He is my only family. I had no choice." "I understand. But these mountains in winter do not care about family or duty. They will kill you just as quick." "You came for me." "I did." Why? The question caught him off guard. Why had he? Any sane man would have known the odds, would have ridden to Truckee for help, would have saved himself. But he had not even considered it. "Because it was the right thing to do," he said finally. "Because I could not ride away knowing someone was dying up there. Because my mother raised me better than that." She was quiet for a moment, then said, "Thank you, Nathan Xavier. I owe you my life." "You owe me nothing. Just stay awake until we get down to my ranch. Then you can sleep all you want." The lights of his ranch appeared through the gathering dark like a beacon. It was a modest spread, a sturdy log cabin with a barn and a few outbuildings, nestled in a valley with good water and sheltered from the worst of the winter winds. Smoke rose from the chimney, meaning his hired man, old Tom Begley, had kept the fire going. Nathan carried Zelda inside, shouldering through the door and laying her on the long sofa near the fireplace. Tom appeared from the back room, his grizzled face showing surprise. "Found her in an avalanche up on the ridge trail," Nathan explained, already stripping off Zelda's wet boots and the sodden blankets. "Need hot water, dry clothes, and whatever food we can get warm fast." Tom moved into action without questions. That was one of the things Nathan appreciated about the old cowhand. He did not waste time when there was work to be done. Between them, they got Zelda into dry long underwear and wool socks, Nathan averting his eyes as much as possible while still helping, though he noted with relief that there were no obvious signs of injury beyond bruising and scrapes. They wrapped her in dry quilts and propped her near the fire with hot coffee laced with whiskey. Color slowly returned to her face over the next hour. She sipped the coffee and ate some of Tom's venison stew, her hands still shaking but growing steadier. Nathan sat across from her, watching her with an intensity he could not quite explain. In the firelight, with her hair drying in loose waves around her face, he could see that she was lovely, with a strong jaw and eyes the color of creek water, green and brown mixed together. "You should rest," he said finally. "You can have my room. I will sleep out here." "I cannot take your bed," Zelda protested. "You can and you will. It is not up for debate, Miss Rivers." She looked like she wanted to argue but did not have the strength. Tom helped her to the bedroom while Nathan spread his bedroll on the floor near the fire. He lay awake for a long time, listening to the wind pick up outside and the first spatter of sleet against the windows. The storm he had seen building had arrived. If he had been even an hour slower, they would both be dead on the mountain now. He thought about the way Zelda had felt in his arms during the ride down, trusting and vulnerable. He thought about her determination to find her brother, traveling alone into dangerous country. There was steel in her spine beneath that delicate exterior, a quality he admired. He had known her only a handful of hours, but something had shifted in him on that mountain, something he could not quite name. Sleep finally claimed him near midnight, his dreams filled with white mountains and green-brown eyes. When Nathan woke, pale winter light was filtering through the windows, and the smell of coffee and bacon filled the cabin. He sat up, confused, and saw Zelda at the stove, fully dressed in what must be some of Tom's old clothes, rolled up at the cuffs. She turned and saw him awake, and a smile lit her face. "Good morning," she said. "I thought it only fair that I make breakfast after you saved my life." "You should be resting," Nathan said, climbing to his feet. His whole body ached from yesterday's exertion. "I have rested plenty, and I am not the type to lie abed when there is work to be done." Tom came in from the barn, stamping snow from his boots. "Storm dropped another foot last night," he announced. "Not going anywhere today." Nathan looked at Zelda and saw the disappointment cross her face. "I need to get to Silver Peak," she said. "Timothy is waiting." "The passes will be closed for days after a storm like this," Nathan said gently. "Even if we could get through, it would be suicide to try. You will have to wait." "I have already waited too long." Her voice rose with frustration. "Every day I delay is another day he could be in danger. And every day you rush is another day you could die in the snow," Nathan countered. "I just dug you out of one avalanche. I am not keen to do it again." They stared at each other across the cabin, wills clashing. Finally, Zelda looked away, her shoulders slumping. "You are right. I am sorry. I am just frightened for him." Nathan crossed to her, wanting to offer comfort but unsure how. He settled for taking the spatula from her hand and steering her toward the table. "Sit. Let me finish this. And tell me about Timothy. What does he look like? When I can ride up to Silver Peak, I will ask around." Zelda sat, wrapping her hands around a cup of coffee. "He is 22, tall and thin, with hair like mine. He has a scar on his left eyebrow from when he fell out of a tree as a boy. He went west because he thought he could make his fortune, send for me. He wrote every week at first, telling me about the camp, the men he worked with. Then the letters stopped coming." "Mail gets lost out here all the time," Tom offered. "Especially in winter, I know. But something feels wrong, I can feel it." Nathan understood. He had felt that same instinct before, that bone-deep knowledge that something was amiss. "We will find him," he promised, "as soon as the weather clears." The storm lasted 3 days. 3 days during which Nathan and Zelda were confined to the small cabin together, learning each other in the way that only forced proximity can create. They talked for hours, sharing stories of their lives. Nathan learned that Zelda had been raised in Sacramento after their parents died of cholera when she was 12. Timothy had been 16 and had worked himself to exhaustion trying to keep them fed and housed. She had found work as a seamstress, and together they had survived, the two of them against the world. "He is all I have," she said one evening, staring into the fire. "If something has happened to him, I do not know what I will do." "You will go on," Nathan said, "because you are strong. I saw that on the mountain. You could have given up, but you fought to stay alive." She turned to look at him, the firelight making her eyes luminous. "I fought because I heard your voice telling me to hold on. I fought because you were fighting for me." The air between them seemed to thicken, charged with something Nathan had not felt in years, maybe ever. He had been alone on this ranch for 3 years, ever since he had come west from Missouri after the war. He had told himself he preferred solitude, that he was not made for companionship. But sitting here with Zelda, he realized he had just been waiting for the right person to share it with. "Tell me about you," Zelda said softly. "You know all about me, but I know almost nothing about you." Nathan leaned back in his chair, considering what to say. "There is not much to tell. I was born in Missouri, fought in the war, came west after. Bought this land with my savings and built this place with my own hands. I run cattle, trap in winter, and mostly keep to myself." "That is the outline, not the story," Zelda pressed. "What brought you west? What do you want from life?" He was quiet for a long moment. "I wanted peace," he said finally. "I saw too much violence in the war, too much death. I wanted a place where I could work hard and sleep easy and not have to worry about who was trying to kill me. This land gave me that. Are you happy?" "I was content," Nathan said, looking at her. "There is a difference. And now I am not sure what I am." She held his gaze, and Nathan felt something pass between them, an understanding that needed no words. Zelda reached across the space separating their chairs and laid her hand over his. Her palm was warm and calloused from work, a hand that knew hardship. He turned his hand over and laced his fingers through hers, and they sat like that as the fire burned down to embers, connected by something neither of them quite understood yet, but both felt deeply. On the 4th day, the storm broke. The sky dawned clear and painfully blue, the sun blazing off the new snow until it hurt to look at. Nathan saddled his mare and the old pack mule while Tom hitched a second horse he used for hauling wood. "I am coming with you," Zelda announced, dressed in her own clothes that had been cleaned and mended. "It is a hard ride," Nathan warned. "I am a hard woman." He could not argue with that, and truthfully, he did not want to. He helped her into the saddle, checking that her stirrups were the right length, and their hands brushed in a way that made his pulse quicken. They set out east, following the main trail toward the high country where Silver Peak lay. The mining camp was everything Nathan had expected and worse. Ramshackle tents and rough lean toss clustered around a frozen creek, with a few more permanent structures made of logs. Men with gaunt faces and desperate eyes watched them ride in, their hands drifting toward weapons until they saw Zelda. A woman in camp was unusual enough to give them pause. Nathan led them to the largest building, a combination saloon and supply store. Inside, it was dim and reeked of whiskey and unwashed bodies. A few men hunched over cards in the corner, and a bartender with a scar bisecting his face watched them approach. "Looking for someone," Nathan said, laying a coin on the bar. "Timothy Rivers, about 22, tall, thin, with a scar on his left eyebrow." The bartender's expression flickered with something, recognition maybe, or wariness. "Why you looking? I am his sister," Zelda said, stepping forward. "I've come to find him." The bartender exchanged glances with one of the card players, a stocky man with a black beard. The bearded man stood and approached, his eyes moving over Zelda in a way that made Nathan's jaw tighten. "Timothy Rivers," the man said slowly. "Yeah, I knew him. Worked a claim up on the north face. Good kid." "Knew?" Zelda's voice cracked on the word. "What do you mean, knew?" "There was an accident about 6 weeks back. Cave-in at his dig. We tried to get him out, but—" The man shook his head. "I am sorry, miss. He did not make it." Zelda swayed, and Nathan caught her elbow, steadying her. Her face had gone white, her lips pressed into a thin line. "Where is he buried?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Up on the hillside under the big pine. We marked it with stones." Nathan guided Zelda outside before she could collapse. She stood in the snow, shaking, tears streaming down her face. He wanted to pull her into his arms, but was unsure if he had the right. "I was too late," she said. "All this way, and I was too late. You could not have known. You could not have changed it. I should have come sooner. When the letters stopped, I should have come right away. Zelda, listen to me." Nathan turned her to face him, his hands on her shoulders. "This is not your fault. You did everything you could. Timothy would be proud of your courage in coming here." She looked up at him, her eyes drowning in grief. "I have nothing left now, no one." "That is not true." The words came out before he could stop them, raw and honest. "You have me, if you want me." Zelda stared at him, tears still on her cheeks, surprise mingling with her sorrow. "Nathan, you barely know me." "I know enough. I know you are brave and strong and loyal. I know that you faced death to find your brother. I know that these past few days with you have been the best days I have had in years. I know that I do not want you to leave." "I do not have anywhere to go," she whispered. "Then stay. Stay with me at the ranch, not as a guest, but as a partner. Help me build something, build a life together." "It is too fast," Zelda said, but her eyes were searching his face, looking for something. "I've found that life is too short to move slow," Nathan said. "I almost lost you to that avalanche before I even met you. I do not want to waste time being cautious about something that feels this right." Zelda reached up and touched his face, her fingers cold against his cheek. "You really want this, want me? More than I have wanted anything in a very long time." She rose on her toes and kissed him, soft and tentative, a question and an answer all at once. Nathan wrapped his arms around her and pulled her close, deepening the kiss, pouring everything he felt into it. When they broke apart, they were both breathless. "Yes," Zelda said. "Yes, I will stay." They visited Timothy's grave together, Zelda kneeling in the snow to place her hand on the pile of rocks. Nathan hung back, giving her privacy for her goodbye. When she stood, her face was composed, the tears dried. She had said what she needed to say. They rode back to Truckee together, but this time Zelda rode beside Nathan, not in front of him. Equals. Partners. The way it should be. The winter sun was setting as they reached the ranch, painting the snow gold and pink. Tom was waiting for them, and he took one look at their faces and smiled knowingly. "I will bunk in the barn for a while," he announced. "Give you young folks some privacy." "Tom, you do not have to," Nathan started, but the old man waved him off. "Ranch could use someone keeping an eye on the livestock anyway. Besides, I snore something fierce." That night, Nathan and Zelda sat together by the fire again, but everything was different. They talked about the future now, about practical things like expanding the herd and building an addition to the cabin. But they also talked about dreams, about children someday, about growing old together on this land. "I want to be married properly," Zelda said firmly. "Not just living together. I want vows before God." "Then we will ride to Truckee tomorrow and find a preacher," Nathan said. "I want you as my wife more than I want my next breath." They were married 3 days later in a small church in Truckee, with Tom as their witness and the preacher's wife playing a wheezing organ. Zelda wore a simple blue dress she had made herself, and Nathan wore his only suit, brushed clean of dust. The ceremony was brief, but when the preacher pronounced them husband and wife and Nathan kissed his bride, he felt something settle in his chest, a rightness he had been searching for all his life. The first months of their marriage were a time of learning and adjustment. Zelda had to adapt to ranch life, learning to milk cows and churn butter, and a dozen other tasks she had never done in Sacramento. She proved to be a quick learner and a tireless worker, up before dawn and rarely sitting down before dark. But Nathan made sure she took time to rest, to laugh, to remember that life was more than just survival. They fell into rhythms together, the easy synchronization of two people learning to move as one. Nathan would rise and start the fire, and Zelda would have coffee ready by the time he came in from feeding the horses. They would work side by side during the day, repairing fences or tending the cattle, and in the evenings they would sit together and talk or read aloud from the books Nathan had accumulated. Winter slowly gave way to spring, the snow melting to reveal green grass and wildflowers. The herd began to grow as calves were born, and Nathan felt a pride he had not expected, showing Zelda each new arrival. She was fascinated by the ranch animals, giving them names and personalities, treating them with a gentle care that made Nathan love her even more. One evening in late May, as they sat on the porch watching the sun set behind the peaks, Zelda turned to him with a shy smile. "I have something to tell you," she said. "I think I am with child." Nathan felt his heart stop and then race forward. "Are you certain?" "As certain as I can be. I have not bled in 2 months and I have been sick in the mornings. I think we will have a baby by Christmas." Nathan pulled her into his arms, holding her tight, feeling a joy so fierce it was almost painful. "A child," he said, wonder in his voice. "Our child. Are you happy?" Zelda asked, looking up at him. "Happy does not begin to cover it," Nathan said, kissing her forehead, her cheeks, her lips. "You have given me everything, Zelda. A home, a purpose, a future, and now a family. I do not know what I did to deserve you, but I will spend every day of my life trying to be worthy of you." "You already are," she said softly. "You saved my life, Nathan, not just from the avalanche, but from being alone. You gave me a reason to keep going when I thought I had lost everything. You are my hero, my partner, my love. You always will be." The pregnancy progressed smoothly through the warm months. Zelda bloomed with health, her figure rounding, her face glowing. Nathan was protective to the point of hovering, insisting she rest more and work less, though Zelda chafed at being treated like spun glass. "I am pregnant, not dying," she would say with exasperation when he tried to take over her chores. "I know, but I cannot help worrying. I could not bear it if something happened to you." She would soften then, understanding his fear. She knew what it cost him to love her, to open himself up to the possibility of loss after all he had seen in the war. So she indulged his protectiveness, let him fuss over her, and in return tried not to do anything too reckless. In late October, they rode to Truckee to buy supplies for the winter and to speak with the doctor about the coming birth. The doctor, an elderly man named Harris, examined Zelda and pronounced her fit and healthy. "Should be a straightforward delivery," he said. "But if you need me, send Tom to fetch me. I can be at your ranch in a few hours." "Thank you," Nathan said, shaking the man's hand. He felt slightly reassured, though the fear still gnawed at him. On the ride home, Zelda was quiet, her hand resting on her swollen belly. Nathan reached over and covered her hand with his own. "What are you thinking?" he asked. "That I wish Timothy could know," she said softly. "That he could meet his niece or nephew, that he could see how happy I am." "He knows," Nathan said. "Wherever he is, he knows, and he is glad you found someone to take care of you." "We take care of each other," Zelda corrected with a smile. The baby came in early December, during a gentle snowfall that blanketed the valley in white. Zelda's labor began in the morning and lasted through the day and into the night. Nathan stayed by her side, holding her hand, wiping her forehead, feeling helpless in the face of her pain. Tom had ridden for the doctor, but as the hours passed and he did not return, they realized they were on their own. "You can do this," Nathan told Zelda as another contraction gripped her. "You are the strongest person I know." "I am terrified," she gasped. "So am I, but we are terrified together." Just before midnight, as the snow continued to fall outside, Zelda gave a final push, and their child slipped into Nathan's waiting hands. A boy, small and red and squalling with outrage at being born into the cold world. Nathan stared down at his son, tears streaming down his face, overwhelmed by a love so intense it felt like being struck by lightning. "A boy," he said, his voice choked. "Zelda, we have a son." "Let me see him," Zelda said weakly, and Nathan carefully placed the baby in her arms. She looked down at the tiny face, already softening from red to pink, and smiled through her exhaustion. "Hello, little one, we have been waiting for you." "What should we name him?" Nathan asked, sitting on the edge of the bed beside them. Zelda looked up at him, her eyes shining. "Timothy," she said, "after my brother. Timothy Nathan Xavier, so he will carry both their names, the brother I lost and the man who saved me." Nathan felt his throat tighten. "It is perfect. He is perfect. You are perfect." The doctor arrived an hour later, worried and apologetic about being delayed by the snow. But mother and baby were both healthy, and after checking them over and giving Nathan instructions for care, he left them alone to become a family. The years that followed were the happiest of Nathan's life. Little Timothy grew strong and healthy, a bright child with his mother's eyes and his father's stubbornness. When he was 2, Zelda became pregnant again, and this time the birth was easier, a daughter they named Rose after Zelda's mother. The cabin that had once seemed spacious now rang with laughter and chaos, with toys underfoot and children's voices filling every corner. The ranch prospered as well. Nathan's herd grew to be one of the largest in the area, and his reputation as an honest dealer made him sought after. He and Zelda worked together to build something lasting, something they could pass down to their children. They added rooms to the cabin, turning it into a proper house. They planted apple trees and a vegetable garden. They acquired chickens and pigs. They built a life. Tom remained with them, growing older but no less spry, becoming a beloved uncle figure to the children. He taught young Timothy to ride and rope, and spoiled Rose with carved wooden toys. In the evenings, he would sit with Nathan on the porch and smoke his pipe, both of them watching Zelda play with the children in the yard. "You are a lucky man," Tom said one such evening. "I know," Nathan replied. "Every day I know." When Timothy was 8 and Rose was 6, Zelda told Nathan she was pregnant again. They welcomed twin boys the following spring, healthy and loud, whom they named James and John. The house was chaos for years after that, but it was a joyful chaos, the kind Nathan had never imagined he could have. As the children grew, Nathan made sure to tell them the story of how he met their mother, about the avalanche and the desperate dig, about hearing her voice in the snow and refusing to give up. He wanted them to understand that love sometimes came from tragedy, that the worst moments could lead to the best things, that courage and determination could change the course of a life. "You were meant to find each other," young Rose said once, her romantic heart captivated by the tale. "I think you are right," Nathan agreed, pulling Zelda close against his side. "I think every step I took in my life was leading me to that mountain trail, to that moment when I heard the avalanche and saw your mother disappear. And I think she was led there too, so we could find each other. It was terrible at the time," Zelda added. "I was so frightened, so cold, so sure I was going to die. But your father would not let that happen. He fought for me when I could not fight for myself." "And you have been fighting for me every day since," Nathan said, kissing the top of her head. The children made disgusted noises at the display of affection, but Nathan saw the smiles on their faces. They were growing up in a house filled with love, surrounded by two parents who adored each other and them. It was everything he had wanted for them, everything he and Zelda had built together. Years passed. The children grew and eventually began lives of their own. Timothy followed in his father's footsteps, taking over more and more of the ranch work as Nathan's body began to slow with age. Rose married a school teacher from Truckee and gave Nathan and Zelda their first grandchildren. The twins went into business together, running a freight company between Truckee and Sacramento. Through it all, Nathan and Zelda remained at the center, the foundation on which everything was built. They grew old together, their hair turning gray, their bodies becoming less spry, but their love never dimmed. If anything, it deepened, seasoned by decades of shared joy and sorrow, of children raised and storms weathered, of a life built hand in hand. On their 30th wedding anniversary, Nathan took Zelda back up to the mountain trail where the avalanche had happened. It was summer now, the trail clear and green, wildflowers blooming in impossible colors. They stood at the spot where he had dug her out, where his life had truly begun. "Do you ever regret it?" Nathan asked. "Staying here with me instead of going back to Sacramento to civilization?" Zelda looked at him like he had grown a second head. "Regret? Nathan Xavier, you are the best thing that ever happened to me. This life, this family, this love, it is more than I ever dreamed possible. Why would I regret any of it? I just wanted to make sure. I know ranch life is hard. I know you gave up a lot to be here." "I gave up nothing," Zelda said firmly. "I gained everything. You saved my life that day, but you have continued to save it every day since, with your kindness and your strength and your love. I am the luckiest woman alive." Nathan pulled her into his arms, holding her the way he had that first night when he had carried her down the mountain. She still fit perfectly against his chest, still belonged there. "I love you, Zelda Xavier," he said. "From the moment I heard you under that snow, I think I loved you, and I will love you until my last breath and beyond." "And I love you," Zelda replied, tilting her face up to kiss him. "My cowboy, my hero, my heart." They stood there on the mountain as the sun began to set, two people who had found each other in the worst of circumstances and built something beautiful from it. The wind whispered through the pines, carrying the scent of summer flowers, and in the distance, they could hear the sound of running water from the snowmelt streams. It was a perfect moment, one of thousands they had shared over their life together. And as they turned to walk back down the trail toward home, toward the ranch and their children and grandchildren, and the life they had created, Nathan felt nothing but gratitude. Gratitude for the impulse that had made him turn his horse toward that avalanche, for the strength that had kept him digging, for the miracle that had kept Zelda alive long enough for him to find her. Some people spent their whole lives searching for the thing that would make them complete. Nathan had found his undertons of snow on a freezing mountain, and he had held onto it with everything he had. And in doing so, he had found not just love, but purpose, family, and a happiness he had never thought possible. They lived many more years together, Nathan and Zelda, surrounded by their growing family, respected in their community, content in their ranch. And when Nathan finally passed peacefully in his sleep at the age of 83, with Zelda holding his hand, his last thought was of that moment on the mountain when he had first seen her face looking up at him from the snow, alive against all odds. His last words were, "I found you." And Zelda, who followed him only 2 years later, whispered the same words as she took her final breath, knowing they would find each other again wherever souls went after this life. Their story, the tale of the cowboy who dug through an avalanche to save the woman who would become his everything, lived on in their children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren, a testament to the power of love and determination, and the belief that some connections are forged in the hardest moments and become unbreakable. The ranch still stands today, passed down through generations of Xaviers, and on a clear day, you can look up at the mountain trail and imagine a lone cowboy digging frantically through the snow, refusing to accept defeat, fighting for a woman he had not yet met, but already could not lose. It is a story of the Old West, of survival and courage, but most of all, it is a love story, the kind that only comes along once in a lifetime if you are very, very lucky.